together, see we do it right. Together can we do it? Yes, we can.
Each man must do his bit.
Welcome to another edition of The Public Interest. My name is David Granger, and we continue our examination of Guyana's public policy and how domestic policy, coincides or reflects foreign policy and vice versa. Today, we will be looking at Guyana's maritime security. It's not a dull subject. It's very important to individuals at the household level, to regions, to the state, and also internationally. My friends, you may not know Kawalpati Mangru. Kawalpati Mangru was the wife of Ramesh Sanchara, and her husband had been in the fishing industry. They'd been together for about 30 years, and he was the main breadwinner. He was killed by pirates. Michelle Carroll, the wife of Sherwin Lovell, who was also involved in the slaughter. Well, Michelle collapsed and died after she heard that her husband had been murdered. Luckily, he was saved. But these two, Sanchara and Lovell, were victims of the worst piracy attack in Guyana's history in May 2018. 16 Guyanese were killed off the shore of Suriname. I was present at the time, and I declared a day of national mourning for those fishermen who were killed. And also, we offered support and consolation to the wives and the households which they supported. Piracy has plagued Guyana's artisanal fisheries for decades. It is nothing new, but sometimes it has become worse. In fact, when I got into office in 2015, I was aware of the gravity of piracy, especially in the quarantine. Of course, it occurs at different intensity all along the coast, from region 1 right through to region 6. And I set out to drive pirates out of Guyana's waters, and perhaps I succeeded too well. We put aerial patrols, we had maritime patrols, but the pirates steal boat engines, they steal fuel, they steal seines, they steal vessels, and in the worst cases, they've actually killed fishermen. And right now, 3 fishermen are missing. We don't quite know what happened to them. And another one is missing recently from the quarantine. And fishing is a dangerous business. And it's not just about what happens at sea and the Coast Guard and ExxonMobil. It's about human beings, human families. And these are the people who suffer first and who suffer most when we have piracy in our waters or when we can't protect our fishermen. So it's not just a matter of losing engines or seines now and then. People, I admit, I was in the hot seat, and I admit that fishermen have been complaining for years to ministers and Minister of Agriculture, ministers of public security. And we would like to work together with the communities, with the families, with the law enforcement agencies, with international organizations and agencies to bring an end to the scourge of piracy in Guyana's waters. It does not have to be unsafe, and it can be better organized, better regulated, and better able to secure the livelihoods of families. And we don't want more widows like Kawalpati Mangru and of course, Michelle Carroll. The fishing industry is very important to Guyana. It is, I would say, it's probably the second most important sector in what is called agriculture. And it employs a huge amount of people. Maybe persons living in the towns may not be aware, but all along the coast, from the Barima Waini right through to the East Babies Quarantine region, there are about 15,000 Guyanese employed directly and indirectly. Some persons are involved in harvesting. They go to sea to bring in the fish. Some are involved in processing. Some are involved in marketing. In fact, thousands of Guyanese families depend on fishing, and many more benefit from activities and jobs which are related to fishing, boat building, engine maintenance, supply gear, and so on. And you may be surprised to learn that women are very important in the industry because very frequently they are partners with their husbands. While the husbands go out to sea, they are managing the post harvest element of fishing. They're looking at marketing the fish, they manage the finances because the husbands are busy getting ready to go out to sea again. So it's a good partnership and it's a family business. And very frequently, young men take after their fathers, and you find that people have been uh, in the fishing business for decades. And on the quarantine, particularly, you find fishing villages where most of the people are actually employed in or support fishing in that neighborhood. And it is because of the action taken by my government from 2015 that many of the culprits and perhaps people who were contributing to the banditry and piracy actually moved away from Guyana, moved away from the quarantine onto Suriname, and some of them continued their lawlessness in Suriname, and that's what led to the big. It's only I can only call it a massacre that took place in 2018, and it has not happened since. There's been greater enforcement on the part of Guyana government and the Suriname government, and most important, we've been able to provide a high level of protection for our fishermen. Now, the industry itself, the fishing industry, contributes about $8.3 billion to GDP. It is not a sideshow, it is central to Guyana's economy. And in all, it is said that the fishing industry contributed about $16 billion. So it is not something to sniff at, and it is something that any government must pay attention to. It is not just laissez-faire, just leave it to who want to fish. The government has to be more deeply involved in protecting the people who go out there to get our fish on a nightly basis, on a regular basis. Now, unfortunately, over the last 2 years, there has been a decline in the catch. And well, blame has been cast because, of course, everyone knows what's been happening in Guyana's maritime zone over the last 2 years. And it is felt that the result of a decline in catch is a result of the maritime operations which are being conducted there. Uh, some of the regions have blamed the dumping of toxic water in the ocean for the declining catches. And of course, Guyanese know the names. Everybody has a favorite fish, gilbaka, trout, and snapper. And over the last 30 years, uh, a fish and chip industry, shops have grown up all over the coast. And I think many people depend on, fish and chip shops for not only for a snack, but for, lunch meals. So it is not something we could dismiss as being not central. Most Guyanese depend on these fish and chip shops. Many people actually go to the wharves so they can get fresh fish. But over the last couple of years, the catch has been declining. And those of us who like shark, those who like snapper, those who like gilbaka, will find not only the prices are going up, but supplies are going down. And unfortunately, many stores have been forced to import fish and shrimp from overseas. So, although Guyanese fishing industry is not in jeopardy, there needs to be some closer attention to the problems affecting our fishermen and also to the industry as a whole. Yes, there have been laws and regulations um, over the last almost 50 years, 60 years, Guyana's tried to define its maritime boundaries. It's tried to regulate shipping. It has tried to protect endangered species because sometimes, turtles get caught up in the seines, in the nets. Um, Sometimes we've had to take action against foreign unlicensed fishing vessels which had come into our fishery zones to poach. And over the years, we have been implementing various laws and regulations. But regulation without enforcement is like an orchestra without instruments. It is no point having regulations and we do not have the means to enforce those regulations and protect the lives of our fishermen. Yes, we have a Coast Guard, but something you should know of historical interest. One of the gifts of the Netherlands to Suriname at the time of independence was a fleet of naval vessels. They got a fleet of naval vessels as part of their independence gift from the Netherlands. And Guyana didn't. And we must admit that our Coast Guard has struggled over the last 55 years to be able to protect our country. Now that we are in what I would call a new era, we are now a petroleum state. We need to rethink the absence of an effective and efficient Coast Guard to protect those valuable maritime assets offshore. Now, our Coast Guard does not have that capability, quite frankly. It has some capability in inland waterways, but our fishermen do not have that shield, that protective shield, to ensure their safety. We cannot respond with our light vessels to emergencies. We cannot respond to threats and attacks on our fisher folk. EEZ. MARAD, the Maritime Administration Department, does not have the capability. The Guyana Police Force does not have that capability. We have to take a whole fresh look at maritime security. It is our fourth frontier. Yes, we know about the Brazilian frontier. We know about the Venezuelan frontier. We know about the Surinamese frontier. But many people take the maritime frontier, the Atlantic coast, for granted. Well, it is perhaps the most dangerous coast because more deaths have occurred there than have occurred along the land frontiers. Look, for example, I'm not talking history, but the fact is in June 2000, the Suriname Navy, yes, the Suriname Navy, a fellow member of the Caribbean community, expelled an unarmed petroleum platform operated by CGX, working peacefully in our waters. But the Surinamese Navy came and forced them out of our waters. We had to go to court to get a judgment which is favorable to Guyana. And as you know, Guyana was given a favorable decision, and the boundary now is more precisely defined. It has always been precisely defined in terms of the what we call UNCLOS, the United Nations Convention on Law of the Sea. And although attempts were made to mediate by the other CARICOM countries, Suriname was stubborn. We went to the court and we won the case, and now we expect that Suriname will respect the judgment of the court. In 2013, October 2013, just a few weeks after President Maduro visited Georgetown, by the time he went home, the Venezuelan Navy intercepted a petroleum exploration vessel owned by Anadarko Petroleum, arrested its crew, took the crew to Venezuela. We could do nothing about that. As you know, as I raised the question in previous discussions with you, since the post-independence period in 1968-69, the Venezuelans, through the Leone Decree, have claimed the waters off of the Essequibo. And they continue to claim it. When I became president in 2015, May, in a few days' time, almost on the same day of independence, the Venezuelans have a knack for this type of drama. They issued a decree claiming the waters off of the Essequibo, part of their EEZ, well, it's part of our EEZ. And as of course, this very month, March, we have to go back to the court to ask for a ruling to prevent Venezuela from claiming that sea, that part of the sea. But in October 2013, the Venezuelan Navy ship Yacuana, intercepted the Anadarko petroleum vessel and led it away into Venezuelan waters. And then again in 2018, another Venezuelan ship intercepted another petroleum exploration vessel called the Ramford Tethys, which was conducting oil exploration in our EEZ. Again, since 1968, Venezuela has been claiming the waters off of the Essequibo. And if you saw a map of the sea space that Venezuela is claiming, you see how absurd it is. In fact, the claims go all the way across to Suriname. They almost deprive us of our exclusive economic zone. So this is no laughing matter. This has been a burden, a strategic burden that Guyana has had to bear, over the last 54 years. And we have had attacks from the east, from Suriname, and from the west, from Venezuela. My friends, we are now in a new economic era, and we need to consider the changed domestic situation, particularly to protect the livelihood of our fishermen, and the strategic situation in order to protect our valuable offshore investments. Many Guyanese fishermen live and work in fear, and we cannot continue like this. Laws and regulations are only as strong as we have the ability to enforce them. And we cannot have widows of fishermen, weeping because their husbands haven't come back. And no matter how much sympathy we offer them, we cannot bring back the dead. We have to put in place a maritime regime for law enforcement. Yes, it must be led by the Guyana Defense Force Coast Guard, but they do not have the craft. We do not have the aircraft, the drones to patrol our EEZ and our coastline. We do not have the backup supplies for a regular navy. We're not making war on anyone. We're just trying to protect our fishermen and defend our territory. So that is a priority. There's no point talking about petroleum revenues if you don't use those revenues to protect the very source of the revenue, which is our exclusive economic zone, where we hope to get so much oil wealth from. So a top priority. And when I left office, I did lay down priorities. But yes, we need to ensure that there is infrastructure and land, but we also need to ensure that the public security element, the national security element, is not ignored. Now, it is not just the economic importance of the fishing industry, but also the human importance and the fact that our two neighbors, Venezuela and Suriname, have treated us with disregard, disrespect, almost with contempt. They feel they can come into our waters at will, and we do not have the capability to respond. I'm not suggesting that we have some sort of naval warfare, but we need to be able to demonstrate to our citizens, particularly those involved in this dangerous. I mean, fishing should not be a dangerous industry. People go to work, they go to sea, and it's very hard work, it's very dangerous work. But we need, at the level of government, to guarantee their safety and security. Sometimes you may find that we sign some agreement with the United States, some shipwright agreement. We see all the glitter and the brass, but does that agreement have an impact on the safety of our fishermen and the security of our EEZ? Similarly, you see last year there's a flurry of activity in France. And of course, France has territories in the Caribbean, well, they call it, you know, uh, overseas, Département d'Outre-mer, Martinique, Guadeloupe, and Guyane, which we call KN. Yes, we signed an agreement, but does that agreement help to protect Guyanese fishermen and prevent pirates from carrying out unlawful activities in our exclusive economic zone? So nothing's wrong with having agreements, but we cannot participate on an equal basis with countries like France and United States. These people are already members of NATO. They've been involved in wars. They might still be involved in wars, but we're not in that league. We need to look after our own security, and we need to ensure that the petroleum revenues are deployed to support the uh, activities of our fishermen and ensure the security of that important fishing industry. We need to deploy our profits from the petroleum industry to protect the very petroleum industry. We need to defend our fourth frontier. We cannot continue to ignore that important border that runs between Punta Playa and the quarantine. Now, the economic importance of the fishing industry cannot be overemphasized. Uh, we have a problem which has gotten worse during the pandemic, that many Guyanese have been bereft of employment, and of course, nutritional standards have fallen. And now that we hear that there has been some form of pollution of the ocean waters, uh, it is a double whammy because not only was fish generally regarded as a cheaper protein food for our children, but also it is now in short supply. And we need to ensure that the measures we put in place preserve and allow the continuity of that important industry and continue to provide our children with cheap food from the sea. And of course, to boost our exports. We don't only produce food to export, we produce food to feed ourselves. And since the pandemic broke in Guyana, food prices have skyrocketed. And many people now rely on the fish and chips, especially sweet potato chips or cassava chips or plantain chips, and good Guyanese fish, bangameri and others. So today we look at a strategic problem, that is to say the problem of the security of our fourth frontier, but we also look at the human problem, that is the welfare of the thousands of Guyanese who are involved in the fishing industry. Every single region is involved. And we get some of the best gilbaka and snapper from Region 2. We get maybe some of the best snappers from Region 6. And the Coast Guard, although it is deployed in every region, 1 to 6, cannot reach even some of the areas that our fishermen, our intrepid and courageous fishermen go. So something has to be done. And I agree with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to engage in agreements with, countries like France, which has a fleet in the Caribbean, in its Departement d'Outre-mer. I agree with the signing of agreements with the United States, which has probably the most powerful navy in the world. But at the same time, I agree that we should enter some arrangement with our CARICOM colleagues so that when we speak about regional security, we also speak about the ability of ships coming out of Trinidad, which has the best CARICOM navy that I know, to help to patrol our coastal zone and help to keep our fisheries safe. We have done pretty well along our land frontiers. Our Guyana Defense Force has mastered the art of defense and land warfare. But our Coast Guard must be built up to be almost on par with the land forces. This is what happens in countries like Bahamas. Bahamas' Coast Guard is not made up of infantry and artillery, it's made up of ships because Bahamas is an island state. And we now have to mimic the Bahamas by ensuring that we accept our liability or responsibility and our duty as a coastal state to protect our fishermen and their livelihoods and their families. My friends, this is what I ask of you, to respect the lives and livelihoods of our fishermen, to understand the importance of the fishing industry to Guyane's economy, to uh, comprehend the importance of the entire coastal zone. Know that Guyana is and will remain for several years to come a petroleum state. And we should not be so weak, or we should not give the impression to our two neighbors, or two coastal neighbors, Suriname to the east and Venezuela to the west, that we are incapable of protecting our own citizens and our own territory. This is my message to you. Let us work with our Ministry of Foreign Affairs, our Ministry of Public Security, and Home Affairs, our Guyana Defense Force to ensure the safety of our fishermen and the security of our frontiers, our fourth frontier, the Atlantic coast. Thank you, and may God bless you all.